My name is Drew Brannon, for those of you who don't know me. This is my 8th year working with Larchmont Charter School. I started at Larchmont in 2016. I've worked primarily at the Lafayette Park campus, the high school campus, teaching English. Last year, I was the AP Lang teacher at Larchmont. This year, I'm working as the self-guided studies coordinator for Larchmont grades 6 through 12. This is my 15th year working in education overall. I'm a musician by trade, but I moved out to California to follow the woman who became my wife. And that was back in 2005 when I was in grad school. And I started working in high schools just as an instructional aide and really loved getting to work with teenagers. And although I never imagined myself being a teacher, that's sort of how I got into it. And I've been working in education for about 15 years now. So I do have two kids, Maggie and Josie. They're on the screen here. They're entering TK and second grade this year. So let's go ahead and get into it. So in Larchmont, we have this value of being a constructivist school. And what that really means is that our students are connecting with each other and they're learning from each other. And that puts an extra challenge on us in a self-guided studies kind of program or an independent studies program. My big concern for the students who are choosing to do this is that this experience can potentially become kind of isolating. You're choosing to stay at home while your students' friends and peers are getting all that social connection at school. And so a lot of what I'm going to attempt to do is really just build connection and create some opportunities where your students can learn from each other as best we can over the internet. So let me just talk to you briefly about what that can look like, and then we'll go into some questions. For our students this year, we're going to ask that a week in SGS looks something like this. Each day, there's going to be an asynchronous check-in that they'll access through Google Classroom. And this, for me, is that first connecting point where they are going to really this is more of like a well-being kind of check-in. It's me getting some quick feedback from them if everything in life is okay, things like that. This is a first point of contact for me. This is going to be done asynchronously, but it'll be a required Google form that they complete each day in the morning between 8:30 a.m. and 9 a.m. And then on Mondays will be our time to have that live instruction. So there will be at 9 a.m. for our 9th through 12th grade students, and at 10 a.m. for our middle school students. There'll be about 45 to 50 minutes of live check-in time. This is mandatory, required, synchronous, live together over Zoom teaching time for me. A lot of what we'll do together in that time is, again, about that connection piece. It's about getting to know one another. It's time for me to make sure they are okay. It will not necessarily always be academically related. It will be around social emotional learning and, again, just overall checking on their well-being. But that will be that daily check-in form, and then also the live instruction will be that first sort of connecting point. From there, going to have your students work through some live small group interaction, and the times here will vary, and it'll be based on what we're doing in that synchronous time. Some of your students might be working in book clubs or other group projects, but this will be less just like teaching time and more time that I'm working with them in smaller groups. And we'll work with your students to schedule the best times for these sessions to occur. We have some flexibility here, and some of what I'll be doing with them next week will be helping schedule that out. On Thursdays and Fridays then, in a typical week, that'll be time for me to do live one-on-one check-ins with your students. We'll have about a 20 to 30-minute check-in, and you all can help me know when the best time for that check-in will be. I know some of you all have other obligations in the afternoons. So that live check-in will occur on Thursday and Friday. And that's time for me to work with your student one-on-one, doing some goal setting, checking on their progress with the coursework, all that. And I think, as most of you are aware, there's going to be, ongoing throughout the week here is their work on Edgenuity. The work that I do with them live and in the small groups and one-on-ones is really to supplement what they're doing through Edgenuity. That Edgenuity is the program we're using to provide the standards-based teaching that is required of them to get their credits. So I'll talk to you about Edgenuity in just a moment. Live small groups on Tuesdays and Wednesdays will probably be 45 minutes to an hour, and that will vary, and there's some flexibility there. That's not directed teaching per se. It's more me requiring some small group interaction for various projects they're going to work on. And they'll do that small group with me. Let's just talk about Edgenuity really quickly. A lot of my work with your students next week will be about getting them on Edgenuity, accessing it, working out the kinks, getting some systems going with that. So I don't want to overload you with information right now about Edgenuity. I know many of you have used this before already, but Edgenuity is the program that we are using this year to have your students complete the required coursework. The exceptions to this would be if your student is in 11th or 12th grade and they're going to be working on their capstone projects. We will use that live small group time for that and not Edgenuity. And then there's also some PE requirements, which I'll be in communication with you about in the coming weeks that, obviously they can't complete just through a computer. I do want you to be aware that depending on the number of courses your student is enrolled, Edgenuity on average takes approximately 80 or 90 hours to complete one class. And that's, within the semester. It's a standards-based program. Students in a very traditional way are progressing through courses on their own, at their own pace, on their own schedule. And then they are, I'm monitoring their progress and acting in an advisory role. They, submit assignments through Edgenuity. And then some of it's graded automatically. Some of it, I will be looking over and having your students revise and rewrite, things like that, and providing feedback on. But they are going to receive a grade for these Edgenuity courses based on the work they submit to Edgenuity, in addition to some supplemental work that I'm giving them in those live instructional times. There's going to be a lot of information that I want. Have you be on the lookout for some things that Edgenuity provides you as a caregiver to support your child's progress. Part of what we'll need to do and what students will be doing with me during those 20 to 30-minute check-ins on Thursdays and Fridays is they'll be setting some goals for their Edgenuity work each week. We'll also be creating a list of assignments that they'll go through, and then we'll track that progress. And I'm going to need your help, especially for our younger students, making sure that they are sticking with that. So there are some tools that I would like you to get familiar with that Edgenuity provides for parents. There's a parent login, and there's different reports and ways you can access that. The other thing that students will be working towards, again, the Edgenuity is there to supplement their coursework. It allows us a way to do that without, them necessarily having to always meet one-on-one with a live teacher. But it's, to be real with you, Edgenuity doesn't always match what our school values in terms of education. We believe students work best when they're learning with and from each other. That live work that they're doing with me is really there again to supplement that and to help them find ways to, progress through their education along with, the values that Larchmont purports. So along with that, part of our live class sessions then are helping them build this portfolio. And this portfolio is something that we evaluate quarterly. And when we do, our sit downs together, you and I, during parent conference week, we'll go over what's in the portfolio. But this will be a way for them to record evidence of their work completion, as well as for them to reflect on their own growth and development and learning. So in their portfolio, we'll have them include, and this is partly just a state requirement, this first bullet point here, but we'll have them include some evidence of their coursework on Edgenuity, but then also for me, and I'm a former English teacher, so, they'll include what I call a reading ladder, which is evidence of their independent reading life. We'll include some writing samples. We'll include some evidence of their physical fitness documentation that they'll need to do, and also some evidence around their community engagement and involvement. I'm going to be encouraging them to, do things to show that they are engaging outside of their home and that they're still connecting with their peers, even though they're choosing to do school at home. That portfolio will be our ongoing record of the learning and the work that they're doing. And part of our conversations at the end of each quarter, when we sit down together, parent, student, and I will go over the portfolio and talk about what they've been doing. Along with that, I know on your mind might be grading and deadlines. So, we are going to, follow the school calendar and we'll go by the quarter system. So I know some of you who maybe were not already on the independent studies program are used to seeing PowerSchool as a way of monitoring your students' progress. The way Edgenuity is going to work is that I'm not always able to copy and paste every single assignment from all of your child's classes into PowerSchool. So PowerSchool will function sort of as their report card, and I will update it probably twice a quarter, but the place we'll need to go, and again, I will send out some tools next week for you to be able to monitor this, will be Edgenuity first and foremost. And within Edgenuity, there will be, some custom assignments that I create for them that'll match like our live synchronous time. Part of what you need to be aware of in the self-guided studies program is that students will have within each quarter a maximum of 20 school days, so about a month to complete any assigned work. Beyond that, we're not able to accept it, and that's within the quarter. So you'll see I've got the quarterly deadlines on the screen here. School does begin next week on Tuesday, August 22nd, and then that first quarterly deadline will be on the 19th. For those of you in middle school, 6th through 8th grade, the deadlines are a little different because the school calendar at Selma is a little different than the high school. I think along with that, the grading that we have to do, that I have to do, is part of what, you all need to be aware of in terms of how we monitor attendance for an independent studies program, because attendance looks a little bit different since they're not coming to a school building every day. So I wanted you to be aware of some policies and some guidelines and criteria that we're going to need to stick to as we work together. We will be monitoring and documenting. There's a lot of data collection that happens. Your child's attendance in the independent studies program, their participation in your participation in the independent studies program, primarily in 3 ways. One are those daily well-being check-ins that I will have them do, where I'm going to send some questions to them via Google Form, they'll respond, and that'll be my first way of just daily checking in with them. Our live interaction, obviously, is another way that we, will be monitoring their attendance, both in the synchronous classes and then in the small group or one-on-one live interaction time. And then we also do monitor both their time spent in Edgenuity as well as their actual completion of assignments. So when they meet with me each week, we and your child will develop a list of assignments that they'll be completing by a certain deadline. And then part of my role with them will be keeping track of that. That information gets documented and it is used to evaluate whether this program is working for your child or not. Independent studies will really require your child to develop several capacities: time management, organization, communication, self-awareness, and responsible decision-making. And so on the screen here, I wanted you to be aware, and this is part of a broader policy that I'm going to ask you to review when you fill out and complete some forms in a moment. Larchmont's policy around independent studies is that if a pupil fails to complete more than 3 assignments during any period of 20 school days, so if they miss 3 assignments, whether that's something I ask them to do through the live classes or if it's something through Edgenuity, or if they're failing to make satisfactory educational progress, which means that we don't envision them being able to progress forward to the next grade level based on their educational progress, then we will conduct an evaluation of whether or not your child is, in the right program, basically. Because independent studies is not necessarily for everyone. And it does, as I mentioned earlier, require them to have a lot of independence. There's a lot that we do in the school building to help students stay on top of their work. There's a lot of structure in place. There's a lot of both, visual and auditory reminders of, where to go and what to do and when to be. And all of that goes away when they're working at home. And so there is going to be a challenge of just helping them stay, especially for our younger students, helping them stay on track. So obviously I'm here to help them, and it's a lot of part of my job just to make sure that they are doing so. But I want you to be aware of this policy as you're considering putting your child in this program, that we are going to take it seriously, that they participate and stay with us, just because we want what's best for them. So if your child is failing to meet those requirements, it would trigger what's called our tiered re-engagement process. And that just means we would, begin reaching out to the family, asking you to meet with us to talk about things. Potentially, it would also mean that maybe your child needs to start completing some of their coursework in our program, like with me on campus, something like that. When I was teaching the classroom, my policy was always that I handled these kinds of situations on a case-by-case basis, and I think that philosophy will still apply. But I just wanted you to be aware of how we are monitoring their progress and holding them accountable to engaging, and then what we would begin to do if those requirements are not being met. One thing I should say too is that my hope is that, let me just go back. And I'm sorry, I meant to say this earlier, but, I'm hopeful that some of these live meetings that are going to happen on Zoom right now can begin to happen a little bit in person. I know that for some of you, depending on the reasons you're interested in this program, that may not always be feasible. for a variety of reasons. But my hope is, again, going back to that connection piece, that your child can meet with me maybe once every month in person, that we can do some of those live check-ins in person, or we can potentially have them meet in small groups up at Selma or up at Lafayette Park. And I think, again, that goes back to that connecting piece that for me is so very important. Like, as a teacher, I didn't feel like my students were learning if they weren't working with each other. And so, I understand that we can use some of these tools online to help your student progress through a curriculum and get the credits they need. But at least for what I believe as an educator, to make it as meaningful as possible, we're going to have to build in that connection. So, to that end, the goal of this program is really about helping your child stay connected to the school and helping them to, access the, things on each campus that they feel interested in or that they're interested in. By no means does your child's participation in this program mean that they can't also be on a sports team or join a club? And part of my role with them, again, will be to help get them connected to campuses, even though they're choosing not to take classes necessarily in person. The best way to reach me is via email for parents, I would say. The best way for parents to reach me is via email. Depending on the situation, I would ask that you please have your student communicate with me first if it's about a question about their schoolwork or something related to their responsibilities. Obviously, feel free to reach out to me anytime, but what we want to build that independence and that sort of self-advocacy and self-efficacy, especially in our younger students. Next week, when your child meets with me, they're going to establish an ongoing G-chat with me where they can reach me anytime. And so I'm available there as well. And most of the day, not always, depending on my schedule as well, but most of the day, the Zoom room you're in now will be available for your student to meet with me as well. I'm available for tutoring or whatever kind of support I can provide. Please also always, hopefully you all, if you're here, you receive the newsletter, but I'll be sending out a weekly, newsletter with important announcements, tips and strategies to help support your students and important information, things like that as well over Parent Square. So please feel free to reach out to me through that as well. So a few to-do items. First and foremost, if there's any issues at all with tech access for your child, especially if your child is going to need to access their online courses in multiple locations or something like that, then please reach out to me. The school does provide everything that you would need to access this program. We can provide Chromebooks, Wi-Fi hotspots, things like that. At this time, I'm not going to require students to have a Larchmont Charter Chromebook, but it is available if they would like to have one, if they don't already have one. I'd ask that over the next few days, if you haven't already, again, depending on the age, but help your student to prepare an at-home workspace, while they'll be doing their work. I think it's important for them to sort of make a little desk for themselves. Obviously, it might be a physical desk or just a space somewhere at home where they can, as much as possible, have quiet and focus. Help them think through how best they would want to organize that space and what they might need in that space besides just their computer, in terms of maybe a notebook to keep themselves organized, a little calendar, things like that. And part of my role with them too next week, and as I meet with them one-on-one, is to help them with that organization. But I just wanted you all to get started thinking about that. The first day of school is Tuesday, so we'll be doing some 50-minute Zoom classes on that Tuesday, some introductory things, getting started with the program and with the week for high school students. And I will email this out to them, but it will be at 9 a.m. And this will be, the Zoom room you're in now is just going to be the SGS Zoom room, so it'll be here. And then middle school at 10 a.m. Okay. There are 2 required forms, and I know for some of you that are here, you may have filled out one of these forms in the past. I'm going to ask that you all fill it out again, just so we have clear records. One is a student-parent contract, and it just outlines some specific responsibilities that both the parent and the student would have in order to help your child be successful in this program. Additionally, there is an independent study agreement. This is our official document to enroll you in the program. So it's very important that by the end of next week, I receive this form back. This form will have to be filled out every year. So if your student has been in the program before, I would still need to have them do it again. So this basic information here, just sort of address things like that. And feel free to read through the policy language here as well. But I will need your signature at the bottom. If you notice here, we're going to list the courses they'll be taking this year, and that is going to be blank for now. So if you'd rather wait and fill this form out after we can meet with your counselor to fill that in, that's fine. That's something I'll be working with them next week on. Lastly, I just wanted to ask one more thing of you all, and that is, would you be willing to send me a short email? I see it as my biggest job to get to know your child so that I can work with them in an advisory role and a support role. And so, what do I need to know about your child right now? So, it can be one sentence. It could be, my child is really, really great. And that's all you need to know right now. And I would really appreciate that.